Greetings, U.S. companies, exporters, trade and business experts. Welcome today, and thank you all for joining us to talk about some essential tools you'll need in your exporting toolkit. So Exim Bank and IBT Online have joined together today to talk about how export credit insurance can help protect your export sales transactions and improve your trust and credibility with overseas customers. And equally, IBT will be talking about localized websites and how they can help you grow your export, sales, brand, and business. So for today's session, please be aware that all participant lines will be muted during the session. But if you've got questions, and we've got some time at the end for some questions, please drop them into the question or chat box, and we will look forward to answering those at the end. Today's webinar is an express edition, so we're just 30 minutes, sharp, to the point, and with a live Q&A. Just while the last people are logging on, let's quickly introduce ourselves as well. My name is Susanna Hardy, and I'm Chief Content Officer at IBT Online. So I get involved in anything that involves content, from search engine optimization to website to marketing content. I'm joined by my colleague, Jeff Artis, Business Development Director for IBT Online. Thank you very much, Jeff. And also, we're delighted to be joined by Jennifer Simpson from Exim Bank. Jennifer is a broker accountant manager and has absolutely won several awards, many awards for her services within the Exim Bank. So without further ado, we're going to talk about today's agenda. So we've divided today's webinar into 4 parts. First, Jennifer is going to take us through some of the main aspects of the Exim services that are really dedicated to helping U.S. exporters, in particular that export credit insurance. So what is it? How do you get it? How can it protect your export sales? How can it build long-term trust for your international buyers? And then Jeff and I will be looking at the online world and some of the tools needed to get found and be understood and do business globally in today's world. You'll see that, as I said, there is some time for Q&A at the close, and we are looking forward to your questions. My colleague Joelle is here as well to help curate questions, and we'll be organizing and managing that. So let's now turn to Jennifer and talk about Exim and how to export competitively using U.S. government tools. Jennifer?
Thank you, Susanna. And thank you, a big thanks to IBT for hosting today's webinar. I'm going to jump right into our slides since this is an express version and explain one of the most underutilized government tools out there. On this first slide, just a short who Exim Bank is, just to let you know if you're not familiar. Can we have the next slide, please? Exim Bank is a government agency headquartered in DC. We have regional offices around the country, about a dozen in major metropolitan areas. And if you peruse our website, you'll see that our main focus is helping companies, US companies, or companies who have a US location at least, to maintain the jobs that they have there and help create new jobs. And we do all of that by helping to increase their market share across the world and selling in additional countries or increasing their market share in countries they're already selling to. So we do work with US companies who have US products or services. We do work with service entities as well. And so the way that works is companies who have made their products completely in the US as a manufacturer, or they're a distributor of products that were made in USA, at least 50% of the content of that. And we can go into more detail about that. And then as for service companies, it would be if you have employees who are based in the US, who are providing services to international companies, that's the profile of the US companies that we're working with. And on this next slide, we want to emphasize, because I know you'll see Exim in the news as it pertains to large projects that we're working on, but we want to say that actually 90% of the number of transactions that we do are for US small businesses. And we do follow the Small Business Administration's definition of a small business. which it typically for a manufacturer, you'll see at the bottom there is 500 or less employees, or if you're a distributor, it's 100 or fewer employees. And that's actually the majority of the companies that we work with across the US. And in fact, no transactions too small. We don't have minimums. I have spoken to companies who said, oh, I'm just not doing transactions big enough to work with Exim, but that's a misnomer. We actually don't have a minimum transaction size. You'll see here that we've actually supported sales of just a few $1,000s in many cases. A lot of the transactions we get are 4, 5, and 6-figure transactions on a daily basis. So please don't think that you're too small to work with Exim. We definitely want to talk to you if you are exporting US products and services. Now, on this following slide, I'll jump right into, we know that, selling at seller's risk, you as the exporter, that's you on the left side here. If you're selling to a foreign country, cash in advance is king, right? If you can get cash from your customer selling overseas, then you can, have that security of shipping the product or providing the service and already having gotten paid. But of course, your buyer sitting on the other side saying, well, I haven't received the product and touched it and felt it, and do I know that this is exactly what I wanted, and is everything in working order? So there's that middle ground that you try to find, and what we're doing at Exim is trying to say, hey, you can still extend credit and not be worried about your customer not paying you, and that way your customer, your buyer overseas, is receiving that product or service and giving their stamp of approval, and they're going to go ahead and provide you the payment at that point. So we're trying to enable companies to be able to give credit overseas but not be worried, and that's probably our flagship product, and that's what I'll be discussing on the next slide. And so letters of credit are still commonplace in a lot of countries, the Asian countries especially. We see that or sale of commodity items, so it could be industry wide as well in some industries. So we're definitely not trying to misplace any bank instruments that you or your customers are comfortable with. But if you are losing sales because you're not giving credit to your customers, not giving open account, then please reach out to us, because that's where we're trying to bridge that gap. If you can see on the next slide here, the product that I'm referring to is called export credit insurance. There's a couple different names for it. Accounts receivable insurance, you might have heard of that. But essentially, these are the top reasons that folks come to us to provide them export credit insurance. And the first one foremost is just the risks of doing business in other countries. And we see that now, and we've seen it in the past. Commercial or political reasons that cause a customer to not be able to pay a US supplier. And I'll go through some of those examples on the next slide. But at first, I'll also mention that the export credit insurance could be used as a sales tool. So you'll see also that there are competitors in other countries that you're bidding against for business, and you're hearing from your customer, yes, I like your product, and I like the guarantee that comes along with it, and I like the quality of US made products, but I also am getting 60-day payment terms from another supplier in another country. Can you match that? So your standard international terms might be 30 days. But if you had the export insurance on your invoicing, you may be willing to extend a little bit longer if you can manage that cash flow wise, to extend 60-day payment terms to a customer to win that business. And then finally, a financing tool is sometimes why folks use export credit insurance. You may have gone to your lender in the past, or you are now or in the future, where the lender says, I can give you a line of credit, but these sales that you have overseas, I'm going to exclude that portion and minimize your line of credit. And so what we do is we offer a beneficiary endorsement to your lender on your insurance policy. So then they're a lot more willing and able to include your foreign sales in with your borrowing capacity here in the US to try to get you a bigger line of credit to support your exports and grow your exports. And if you're not doing that now, it might come up in the future. We simply have folks that use the export credit insurance for one of these reasons. Some you just maximize it and use it for all these reasons. So at some point, we feel it might come up in one or other of these categories that you might want to look at getting export credit insurance for sure. On this following slide, please. Some of these risks that I was mentioning that the export credit insurance covers. On the commercial side, you might be doing business in other countries where their customer goes insolvent or bankrupt, or the equivalent of what they refer to it as in their country. They might call it something else, but we know what that is here. Or just that they're slow paying you, that's protracted default. They may have extrinsic reasons why they are running into cash flow issues. So your business might be as it's always been with them, but suddenly they're running into cash flow issues. That could be them balancing their own line of credit in their country, or reasons like what we're going through now, things out of their control. So what we try to emphasize with exporters is you might not have thought about these things that could come up, but that these are some of the top reasons that we see claims. And you may have an excellent relationship with your customer and that could carry on, but that there are other reasons that affect their ability to pay you as a US company. And so we want to make sure that you have this kind of coverage. On the political side, on the right here, currency transfer risk, what we mean there is you're invoicing in US dollars, most likely to your foreign customer, and they have to go to their bank locally, right, and exchange their local currency to US dollars to pay you on time against your due date. But let's say they go to the bank that week and it's an unfavorable trade rate to US dollars. So maybe they say, well, let me just wait another week and see if it gets a little better. And then they're waiting another week after that because it actually got worse. And then they're kind of dragging out that payment. So that could, definitely end out in a bad situation. You could be out, 30, 60, 90 days from when they were supposed to pay you. We all remember the euro devaluation, which was unexpected not too long ago. That caused, some short payments or some reworkings of some invoicing. And this way, if the customer doesn't pay because they just don't have the cash, then the insurance would kick in and pay because you have a non-payment situation at that point. War hostilities in a region. I'm certainly seeing some of that around that cause a customer to not be able to pay you. Perhaps their warehouse or storefront was destroyed. Could be a fire, could be a natural disaster, things like that. They may or may not have had the proper insurance to protect their inventory to be able to pay their suppliers like yourself. Yet they were expecting to sell that inventory to repay you in the first place. Cancellation of an import license. Sometimes some countries stop the import of certain products into the country, but perhaps your product is already on its way or it's already being going through customs at the foreign port. All these sorts of things we don't really think about when we're trying to build relationships with our customers. And rather than have these sorts of discussions with your customers, you could also just have insurance in the background, knowing that you're safe in case they do arise. On this following slide, I have the options of how we set up this kind of insurance. So we have a multi-buyer approach, what we call, it's like a portfolio approach. So if you were to say, hey, I'm going to do these exports on credit, but I want to make sure that anytime I do that, Exim is covering my invoicing, so that if I don't get paid, I'm covered. So we do, for a lot of exporters in the US, have their whole portfolio under an insurance policy. So because they're really not sure who's not going to pay them, of course, or what's going to arise. So they've chosen to do that, and that's as much as 95% cover. And even for some of our exporters here in the US who export to governments overseas, it's as much as 100% coverage for those sales. So you can really get a high dollar value of coverage here. That's covering product and freight that you might invoice your foreign customer for. And these are real pricing examples as well. And I'll mention the single buyer policy approach on the right side is just where you might have a portfolio of international customers, but you'd really only like insurance on one of them or a few of them because they're perhaps new customers that you don't know so well, or countries that you're a little bit concerned about, or maybe they're ordering a much larger quantity than they ever have, and that would damage your business if you weren't paid. So there is also the approach of buying insurance on a one-off customer basis. That's single buyer, and that's 90% coverage, still a great amount of coverage, doesn't go down too much. You'll see the pricing changes a little bit. For example, a typical sale to Mexico, 1 to 60 day payment terms, maybe $275, just to give you a real example. As comparison on the single buyer, if you were just insuring Mexico and you did have other customers excluded from the insurance, that could be around, say, $465 for the same $50,000 sale. So still much less of a cost than hiring an attorney or even traveling down to Mexico to try to collect yourself to have the insurance in place with Exim. There aren't underwriting fees. These are our premium costs, and you're really seeing an all-in exposure here to yourself if you're using the insurance and giving credit overseas. On this next slide, you'll see that the process for this is a lot easier than you might think it would be, especially with a government agency. So I'll go through an example. We have folks who call our office direct in DC, or they call our regional offices, or they call one of our insurance agents or insurance brokers, and they go through the options of what they are looking for and what's available. And possibly right over the phone there, that application could be completed and sent to the exporter for signature. And then those are input electronically to our DC office where our underwriters are located, and usually processed in 2 to 10 days time. It's actually quite quick. It all depends on whether we know the international customer that the exporter is selling to. That could play into us waiting for information profiles that we purchase on international companies, for example. But once that insurance is promised to you, the exporter, in 2 to 10 days, at that point you could offer credit to your foreign buyers. So you're setting up a purchase order or sales acknowledgement with them. They're signing off on that and agreeing to pay on those terms. You always want to have a written agreement. We don't recommend WhatsApp purchase orders or Viber or anything like that, or phone calls. Really good to have a purchase order on a form. If it's on your own form, it should probably be signed by your foreign buyer. If it came in on their form, that's usually good. But at that point, the contract has stated the payment terms and the buyer has accepted. They're on step 3. So they're agreeable to that, and they can see an outline of what it is that you're promising them. Ship here, bill here, these 10 widgets at this price, at these terms. And so everything's kind of on that. That's very helpful to have a written purchase order. Number 4 here, you perform the service or you ship the product and you invoice the customer. At that point, you're logging into your Exim online account and letting us know that the sale happened. So that's the point at which that cost incurs for the insurance, because up to this point for our evaluation of the international customer, we've charged nothing for that. Only if you actually make the sale happen do you pay to protect that invoicing. So you would log on to your Exim online account, record that sale to that specific account, pay the insurance premium right there with your credit card, get your frequent flyer miles. You'll get an email receipt saying you're covered for that sale. And then at step 6 here, simply the buyer pays, or you've gone through maybe a time period of them not paying and you're trying to communicate with them and collect from them, and say you're 90 days down the road, and at that point you're pretty sure that you may not receive payment. That opens up the claim filing window with Exim Bank, so 90 to 240 days. You have a 5-month window to turn it over to Exim for claim payments. A really big window to try to work through things with the customer. We don't force exporters to file insurance claims on the early side. We know that you're trying to work through things with them, and probably something strange to their normal business came up that's causing them to not be able to pay you. So that's the process primarily. On this following slide, here we go. We do have a listing of countries on our website of where we offer this service. It's an alphabetical listing. You'll see the link in the bottom right here. And simply, right now it's about 188 countries that are listed there as available for coverage. So when you follow that web link, you'll see that you can click on a specific country and it will give you a Y for yes or an N for no. So that simply says we are providing coverage there or are not. We do break it down into whether you're invoicing a government there or just a private company. So you'll see that that could change by country. Some countries we're willing to do private sales, but maybe not to the government of that country. And again, that's something that our insurance agents, brokers, our regional offices and our headquarters in DC can walk you through whether a particular country is eligible or a particular product that you're selling may or may not be eligible. And on this next slide, I want to say that this is a list of our regional offices. We do have a request, a consultation link that you can access us through. And I think also through this webinar, you're about to receive a do you want us to contact you link as well. So whether that's today or in the future, please feel free to have us reach out to you, qualify your product as Exim eligible, being that it's US made or mostly US made. And we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Jennifer, thank you so much for that overview. Really a very, very clear explanation of some of those main services from Exim. And as you can see, these services are accessible and within reach and look pretty easy to get. I'm going to launch a quick poll now, so I would really appreciate it if you could just grab your mouse, and let us know if you would like an Exim specialist to contact you about the Exim services. And you know, just to say, you know, yes, please, and Jennifer and her teams will be in contact. Or if you're still thinking about it, and just collecting some responses now. It's interesting. But thank you, first of all, for all responding so actively. That's nice to see. And Jennifer, I'm happy to see as well. That looks like you're going to be pretty busy. You and your team will be quite busy as well. I was going to give one more last second for the last people to respond on that. I have to say, actually, many of you have responded very, very well indeed. Thank you. I'm going to close the poll now. And I'm happy to say that there's some good interest there. I guess it's also very good timing. So I've closed the poll. And now we're going to talk about a different subject, although still very much toolkits and you know, what do exporters need and how do, you know, what are some of the things they need besides export insurance? From IBT Online's perspective, we feel that you need localized websites. A quick introduction also to IBT Online. IBT Online is a US company. We are 100% focused on building, managing, hosting online tools for exporters. So that means websites, online marketing for exporters, for international markets. So we are you know, I think our biggest unique selling point is really that we work, think, act globally and online, and have done so since our creation in 2002. Let's talk about what we mean by the online world. So just a quick, you know, blast landscape of the online world. So, you know, at the moment the world is like 7.5 billion people. 60% of the world is online. And when we talk about being online, we mean not just occasionally. The average amount of time spent per day by these 4.5 billion people is nearly 7 hours. Nearly 7 hours a day by 4.5 billion people is spent online. One of the big things they're all doing is, of course, communicating. So I said 4.5 billion people are online, 3.8 billion of them are on social media. And again, they're on social media for nearly 3 hours a day, so nearly half the time that they are online for, they're on social media of all types and platforms and varieties across the world. If you are a small mid-cap company, this is good news. This is great news because you know exactly where your export markets are. Where are your prospects? Where are your clients? Where are your distributors? Where are your employees? They're all online. And you can find them and reach them and communicate with them by using online tools. That's the good news. So, and this is no longer just the prerogative of the huge companies. This is now very much in the range and grasp of the small mid-cap companies as well. For us, it's really important, and we really stress this, these effective online business tools are really important also for getting prepared for the rebound. We don't know when the rebound or the shape of the rebound, but we do know that you need to prepare for it. And some of the tools you'll need for that preparation are online tools, the right kind of websites, the right kind of online marketing. The biggest message we have is don't disappear. Don't disappear from the radar. It's really hard to claw back that market share. So I guess in answer of that first question that I said, why do exporters need localized websites? You need them because the world is online. That means all of your clients, all of your prospects, and especially if you're an exporter, you need them to communicate with your prospects. You also need them at this time to prepare for the rebound, to have effective online business development tools to make sure that people can interact with you when they want and how they want in the current environment. It's not hard. There are basically two types of online business development tools. There are websites, and they come in all shapes and sizes and formats, with or without e-commerce. And there's online marketing. And here we can talk about search engine marketing and social media marketing and so on. But that's basically your toolkit that you need to have. But there's one characteristic which is vital for all online activity, and that is that it puts the customer, the searcher, at the heart. So at the very center is your customer. It enables your customer, your prospective customer and your client to have the visibility and power that they want to have, to look at other customers, to compare your prices, to compare your services in a way that the pre-internet world simply did not. And I guess part of this is reflected in the way that search engines are also constructed. Search engines are absolutely vital in this. They are also localized. So Google US is very different from Google in the UK, for example, or Google in Argentina, or Google in Japan. There are lots of different search engines, but they are all operating in the same way. They are all customer or searcher centric, which means your websites have to be customer searcher centric, so that your US website is not necessarily fit for purpose if you're targeting your German prospect or your Japanese client. It's not in Japanese. It's not in google.jp. It's not, and Google knows that. Google can see that. And it's not relevant for that prospect. Therefore, Google will not rank you, will not show you to that prospect or that client. Just a quick example here with things I mean. Here's an example of keywords, which is one of the major things one wants to get right when looking at websites and also online marketing. Here's an example using the same language, Spanish, the same search engine, Google, but the words can be different. And if you are a company targeting Mexico and you're in the automobile sector and you're using the wrong word, you're using the Spanish word coche for car, then less than 1/3 of people in Mexico will use that word for searching online, and you will not be seen as relevant for many of those searchers. So again, it's really just sort of hamstringing yourself from the start. Jeff and I were looking at some examples, and particularly in this age of working at home, it's really important that your dog doesn't disturb the webinar. So if you take the google.com, Jeff is based near Boston, and he goes on to google.com and he goes squeakless dog toys for my webinar. I'm sitting in London, and I go on to google.co.uk because that's my Google, and I go squeakless dog toys. I get very different results. I mean, even Amazon, he gets amazon.com and I get amazon.co.uk, because Google knows that I'm sitting somewhere else, that what is relevant to me is different than if I'm sitting in Boston. And that Google is different. It's google.co.uk. That's what we mean by localization. On this website, on this next slide here, I've listed the 10 criteria that we list for a localized website, which basically means that language is just one criteria. But you'll see that hosting optimally, the correct content management system, abiding by the correct regulatory requirements, multilingual navigation, the right domain names, all factor in to having a strong localized website. Now let's talk about how exporters use localized websites and also some of the programs that we offer. Jeff, perhaps you could talk us through a little bit about international buyer personas.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I know we're moving quickly through our time, but I thought it would be good to provide a couple of quick examples of practical applications of website localization. First concept that I want you to keep in mind is something that we call the buyer persona, which is a semi-fictional representation of who you're targeting with your website and your marketing efforts. So it's important to get together with sales and marketing and senior management and others in your company and determine who you're trying to reach, what their profile is, and where they go to get information, so you can make sure that you have representation there on the web and in social media. This can be very different for an international buyer persona than for a domestic persona. Here's a good example. L'Oreal, the hair care company, is widely praised for getting their target marketing spot on. And right now they're actually doing 3 different outreach executions for different countries under the current situation. So in the US, they are reassuring stylists that they are there for support while many salons are closed and they're having to social distance. If you have a look at their Australian site, you will see that the message is very different. There's no message of COVID-19, but instead they're focusing on climate and the environment and recognition of the terrible fires that they had in Australia a few months ago. And Brazil is even different still. They're focusing in Brazil on the fact that they're manufacturing hand sanitizer, which is not a typical L'Oreal product, but they do it to support their communities when they most need it. So you can provide a good message to different audiences with different websites. Couple of lots of different value for international websites that you can keep in mind. We've talked about brand awareness. We've talked about lead generation, but it's good to remember too that your website is not just to engage your customers. Less often considered value is to identify and recruit and support distributors, and I will give you an example of that as well. The thing to remember is that what you're trying to achieve with a foreign language website is that you want to give your prospects and your customers who are browsing your site from other countries the same local user experience that someone from the United States would have on your current site, with the same product information flow, the same branding, and the same messaging. So very, very quickly, I want to show you a couple of examples of exporters using localized websites in different ways. The first one is a client of ours in North Carolina. We were speaking with their CEO, and we thought he expressed very well the motivation for putting international websites up right now as a way of getting ready for the rebound. Different companies are opening back up at different times in different countries, but the typical business model is broken. Many companies rely on trade shows and face-to-face visits to sell, but that's not possible right now, so they have to change the way they do business. And ASI has a good international team. They've been fortunate to be able to keep manufacturing due to the slowdown. So for them, this is just the right time to use an international website to let their overseas customers know that they're open for business, while a lot of their competitors may not have been manufacturing. The second example is Bullman Products. They're a great example of a company that uses websites to fix some challenges typical to their industry. They manufacture paper cutters and other crafting tools, but they're a leader in a sector where there isn't a lot of brand recognition. So their reason for using localized sites was to raise their brand visibility. They also are not convinced that their distributors do a great job of marketing for them. This is a problem that many of you may find that you have. So they've decided to actually take control of their international online marketing, their international online space, and their brand. And it helps them achieve a couple of things. They can engage customers. They can recruit distributors. They can support distributors by giving them a tool to have conversations about their products in other markets. They can generate leads for them. And because the web is all about data, they now have very detailed information on who their end customers are, who looks at their content and is ultimately getting referred instead of just taking anecdotal information from their distributors. The last example is an aerospace company in Florida called Avionics Support Group. They've actually built 7 websites over time, but they started with Mexico and China. They have very strong sales reps in China, but they sell very technical components, so their reps needed help explaining and differentiating the details and the specifications. So a Chinese website turned out to be a great tool for them. Another thing it did is it emphasized to Chinese companies that ASG cared about and was invested in the Chinese market. The ROI came very quickly because a Chinese airline actually found the website, reached out to them, and they were able to close a significant parts supply deal within just a few months of going live. So if you're interested in learning more, we have other case study videos for different sectors on our website. Now probably time to hand back over to Susanna to wrap up real quickly what we've talked about and take some questions. Before that, I will just mention that we do offer something called the Online Global program for companies who want a simple place to start a 2-market website build for their top 2 priority markets with a predetermined scope at a predefined cost. There are grants available for this as well from state level international trade agencies. So if you'll contact us, we can help you navigate and find the best place to start. I will send over to Susanna.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I'm going to launch a quick poll, our last poll before getting on to questions. So would you like to learn more about website localization and international online marketing? Please let us know, and we can send you other things through the email, and we can send you some information on. I see there's also quite a few questions about selling into Europe, e-commerce, VAT, things like that. So we will also be getting to some of those questions at the Q&A session later for that. But thank you all for responding. That's tremendous. We are very, very pleased indeed. And indeed, we will be reaching out to you for more information for all of those who replied as such. I'm going to close the poll now and just to wrap up and then go to questions. Thank you. Right. I guess just quick takeaways and Q&A from our point of view. The takeaway, if you remember one thing, basically the world is online, and that's a great way to prepare for the rebound and a great tool for small and mid-cap companies to use. Take advantage of it. The next also is the online world is always, always localized. And therefore, your online tools must also be localized in order to be effective. From Exim's point of view, they are just a click away. Get onto their website, grow.exim.gov, consultation request, find your local office, get in touch, and they can help you. Jennifer and her team can help you on that. I guess our final message to all of you, these kind of like weird times that we're in, they're kind of strange. So look after yourselves, look after your communities, and be kind. Now I'm going to open up to questions, and I see that there are quite a few. My colleague Joelle hopefully will have collected them all. Joelle?
Absolutely, thank you, Susanna. There are indeed, we've received a number of questions, so I've done my best to try and pull them all into similar topics just to try. I'm very conscious of time. So maybe starting, a few came in during the first part of the presentation. If I can direct this to yourself, Jennifer. A few of our listeners today were asking, does Exim still offer a small business discount on the insurance?
Thank you. Yes, we do. Some folks use our financing product in conjunction with the export credit insurance that we talked about today. Or if you are a company who has access SBA's financing to support your exports, we do offer a 25% discount on our insurance if you're using the financing and insurance in conjunction with one another to support exports. So just let us know that you are, and we're happy to issue discounts on our insurance that way.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We've had a few questions. Maybe Jeff, you can help in answering those. So a lot of people were wondering, how do they know if the state has these step grants to offset the website build cost? And there were a few questions about where can they get the contact details for the specific state economic development agency? How do they get in touch with them?
Sure. All of the state international trade agencies should be available in a quick online search, but there is a national organization of them called SIDO, S-I-D-O, and if anyone wants to pull the email address from the screen here, ja@ibt.onl. If you'll email me, tell me what state you're from, I'm happy to introduce you to the state level people who manage marketing grants.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jeff. And yeah, as Jeff mentioned, contact details are on the screen, so feel free to reach out to our panelists today. Before we wrap up, a couple more, maybe one for you, Jennifer. People are asking, what is the renewal process like with Exim?
Oh, sure. We do initially set up, the exporter and the foreign customer under an insurance policy that runs for 1 year. At about the 10 or 11th month mark, we reach back out to the exporter to ask if they'd still like insurance on that same international customer and their overall account renewed. And if we see they've been using it, we can probably tell that from online. So then we just do a cursory look at their account. It's really nothing like the initial process, which again was only 2 to 10 days to start. But then once we do our cursory look, we can extend the account for another year. So it's pretty painless process, and it doesn't cost anything to renew with Exim.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you very much. So then I'll keep going. We've got quite a few more questions, so you tell me how we're doing on time. But maybe could squeeze one more in for Jeff at this side. I can see quite a few, maybe people that don't have a huge marketing team or web development team in-house. They're asking whether IBT helps with the content creation for the website and the marketing. How is that structured?
Sure, we can certainly help with content creation for the site. We make sure that the websites that we build are all loyal in terms of branding and image flow to your US site. We can also do some creative things with online marketing. We have actually, for instance, helped clients write blogs in foreign languages to reach certain audiences. So there are a lot of things you can do with localization to make some impact in your export markets.
That's great. Thank you very much, Jeff. If we've got time for one more, I know a lot of people are coming in now as we speak with asking for further clarification. Oh, sorry, Jennifer, to hand this over again to you. There is a few asking what type of information would they need to provide about their foreign customers to start the consideration or to be considered for invoice protection.
Sure. I'll give an example of our most common request, which is $100,000 and below. If you're planning on doing that sort of sale to an international customer or having that sort of balance with a customer, simply a reference from another supplier who has had at least half that, say 50,000 in history with the foreign account as a credit limit. And then the due diligence that we do behind the scenes would generally get a U.S. exporter $100,000 insurance approval on their foreign customer. And so mainly we want to know the foreign customer has been in business for 3 years or more as well. And then we do due diligence checks on who you can and cannot sell to as a U.S. entity. So we will check those government lists for you as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I hope this helped everyone that keeps coming in with more questions. Obviously, Jennifer, I'm sure she'll be very busy with further contacts from today. But we've got a couple minutes left for a Q&A. I can see people are following from the question about content and website creation. I've got quite a specific one here. We have a new product launching in October. Suppose the question is, how long would it take IBT Online to build a website? Will we, what's the timeline? What do we need to take into account? Maybe Jeff, do you happy to take this one on?
Sure, happy to, Joelle. So typically it takes 2 or 3 months to put together a best practice, fully optimized and localized website. So, and that would be 2 sites together at the same time. So if you started working on it in June, July, August, then you're fully up and running sometime in September to support your product launch.
Perfect.
Terrific.
So
I'm gonna, sorry,
thank you,
I'm gonna sort of go in, butt in now. I think we do still have questions, but we did say that this would be an express version. So I want to we want to keep to that level. We will answer your questions by email directly, because there are some that we have not answered, and we will answer them by email. We have your email addresses. In the meantime, to answer something that several of you have asked, yes, you will get a recording of this webinar in your inboxes in 2 days' time. So do have a look for it on Thursday this week. And so it just really stays with me to thank Exim Bank, Jennifer and her team, to thank my colleague Jeff for presenting, and also Joelle for doing a great job on creating the questions. Thank you all for attending and being so involved and participative. That's very kind of you. We really appreciate all the questions and answering the polls. Stay well, stay safe, stay exporting, and don't drop off the radar. And see you all online somewhere soon, I hope. Bye-bye. Thank you all. Bye-bye.